Welcome to the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token podcast, brought to you by Chris.
What, is that me?
That's you, yeah.
Chris and...
Euan.
Yeah.
I was hoping you'd say my name, Chris.
Oh, no,
say my name.
I'm not doing this, sort of two hosts introducing each other thing. I'm not doing that.
You don't want to be like Destiny's Child and say my name.
That's a 90s reference, I believe.
That's all the references I know.
From the 90s?
They're all from the 90s. Really.
Alright.
Yeah. We were just watching K-Pax. Was that from the 90s?
I have no idea.
We weren't really watching it, to be honest.
Right, this is the weirdest intro ever. What episode is this? Is this 4?
This is episode 4.
Right.
It's becoming a regular thing.
Hi.
Hello.
So this is a podcast about gaming in general, really.
All sorts of gaming.
Yes,
really.
At the moment we're talking about video gaming and board gaming, but we're going to add to that. We do have a contributor.
Oh yes,
who will be popping up in the next episode.
Yeah, we will get him in next episode. We've heard what he has to say.
Yeah.
For himself, and
it's going to take us. It's going to take us a couple of weeks to deal with that.
It might take you a bit of time to process. So we'll save it for next week. We're just going to put that out there, so you know about it.
What else? What else have we got to say for ourselves? We've not done much video gaming.
Yeah, to be quite honest, not a lot's happened since last episode.
Yeah, well, we do have a bit of an excuse. It's been a bit of a struggle moving into this headquarters.
Yes, it has.
It's been a long, slow process, and we've generally just been knackered. The
commissioner's been giving us grief trying to get in here.
So we have done a hell of a lot of board gaming, though, comparatively.
We have, yes, and probably this is going to be quite a board game heavy episode.
Very board game heavy. I mean, the only reason we've done that much board gaming is because people keep turning up at headquarters and demanding to play games with us. So.
Well, that's the point of the exercise, really, isn't it?
It is a bit.
Yeah.
So, prepare yourself for a board game heavy episode. We have done some video gaming, but it's probably not what you're thinking. Nothing brand new.
No.
Some old school video gaming.
If you want to follow what we're doing, you might want to pick yourself up an emulator.
Yeah.
And some ROMs.
Right.
Shall we get on with it then?
Yeah, that was the intro.
Let's just hammer away at it now then.
Let's go.
Straight into board games. So, we're going to start probably the game we've played most frequently of late is Space Cadets. Away Missions.
Yeah. This is a Kickstarter thing that I received just a couple of weeks ago. It's the third in the Space Cadets line.
Is there another game?
There's 3. There's the first one being Space Cadets, which is on that shelf behind you somewhere.
Oh, wonderful.
And then they did a Space Cadets Dice Duel, I think it was called. Which is kind of like a dice version of Space Cadets.
Right.
And now they've done Away Missions, which is completely different from Space Cadets.
Yeah. It's a whole different thing. It's thematically fitting in that sort of...
It picks up on that sort of 50s sci-fi sort of thing, that early sci-fi era.
Yeah, it probably goes a little harder on it than the original than Space Cadets.
Well, one of the things that the two games have in common, the two that we've played, which are Space Cadets and this one, Away Missions, is that they're ridiculously difficult.
Aye.
I don't think we've yet won a mission in the original Space Cadets. Still struggling.
No, I think I've only played it with you the once, and it was pretty disastrous, really.
I think I've played it 3 times now and still not got past that first quest.
Yeah.
There's far too much dexterity and puzzle and logic solving things and all that kind of thing. It's just not good for the group of people that we play with.
No.
Because they're all thick.
Or too pissed.
Or both. Yeah. Right, so Away Missions. Talk to me.
Okay, well, it's a dungeon crawler,
essentially.
Basically. It's very different from the original Space Cadets if you are familiar with it. You've got sort of 6 characters to choose from, and you're essentially playing various missions, away missions, in space, or various planets, against aliens. That's the kind of the outlook.
That's the theme of it. But you have like a team of guys, and you can pick from your team of guys, and each mission tells you how many players it's recommended for, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you've got these sort of like, you know, your captain and your first officer and all that sort of thing. Very Star Trek-y that way. But the sort of aliens in it are the classic sort of Martians from like 50s B movies and stuff. You know, you've just got a, like, what is it they call them in the game?
Saucermen.
Saucermen, that's what they're
called.
Hot
Saucermen.
And you get their like Saucermen leaders, and you get little space bugs and space leeches and stuff like that.
And you got the Sentinel, which as I've commented many times, is clearly just the mutant from this island Earth. Which, if you've not seen, is worth a view. I would recommend it to you.
Yeah, you've seen so many weird things like that I don't know what you're talking about when you bring them up.
Well, I can tell you, it's called a mutant.
A mutant.
Yes.
Well, so the game itself, it plays. I mean, you basically just got a bunch of hexagon-shaped tiles.
Yes.
And then you lay them out depending on what the scenario says. And you'll start on some tile, and you put all your guys on this tile, and then every turn at the start of each player's turn, they've got to scan a tile. So all the tiles are face down. You've got to flip one face up, one that's closest to you. If you can choose one if there's multiple ones close to you. And you flip it over, and then there's generally some stuff on that tile. There'll be other little tiles on it that say, you know, put 2 bugs in a saucerman here or something like that.
Well, we haven't encountered any missions where there's not been an aliens and aliens on every tile.
And aliens.
And aliens.
And you stick them on, but so you'll have some guys turning up on pretty much every tile, like you say.
Yeah.
And then you've got to try and deal with that. It becomes, I think the technical term is, a clusterfuck, because there's just so many aliens on the board.
I believe that's how it's referred to in space.
It is. It's, your ship is called the USS Clusterfuck.
We travel into the world's greatest clusterfuck, and space's greatest clusterfuck.
Very thematic.
Yes.
On your turn, you've basically got like a bunch of actions you can take, and it depends on your character. You've generally got sort of 2 normal actions that you can take, and then 1 specialised action. So your combat guys can only take a combat action for their third action, or your sort of sciencey guys or your doctor or whatever can only take non-combat actions. I think the captain just gets 3 actions of his choice.
You were going the captain, and they were all just any action basically. I was going a more combat orientated guy. And what's his name? Chief DeSoto, Chief Lance DeSoto.
Chief Lance DeSoto.
It's the chief. You've got sort of various options with your actions, and each character has but there's usually like a certain ability with each character.
That's right. Yeah.
There's also IQ levels for each character, which comes into play at various points.
And that's usually used for your non-combat things. So it's for healing and trying to. Like work out what an alien object does or something like that.
So when I was the chief, I was pretty much useless at most of
you
those
were just
things.
a muscle.
Aye. When you move on to, well, we should probably also mention that with the different hexes as well, with the aliens that come out, you're also getting bits of kit on each tile.
Again, depending on the mission, but
there
did
seem to be pretty much always stuff kicking about.
So far, we've done 3 missions.
Yeah. It's ramped up the difficulty.
Oh, yeah. The first mission was just so easy, we were like, oh, this game's just going to be a breeze.
Well, it was to show you, I guess it was to show you the basic mechanics of the game. It was just very simple, just going through hexes, and it had all the sort of, the main features of what you were sort of encountering.
Yeah.
Up to that point, anyway, there started to be slightly more complicated elements put in, like mission-specific things.
Yeah. I mean, like, what were the missions? The first one was just generally...
It was, you were basically getting onto, like, some alien spaceship and just killing everything, essentially.
I think you had to kill a sentinel.
You had to kill a sentinel,
and then get back to the thing. Back to the shuttlecraft.
Yeah.
And then the second mission was, you started off in a slave cell, didn't you? And you had to get to an elevator.
They really threw you in at the deep end on the second mission.
And it was like, the map was twice the size, and the aliens were relentless.
Yeah.
And we failed at the first thing.
We failed it 3 times. Twice times. And then we managed it on the third, but We got quite lucky, I think, with a lot of the stuff that came out.
Yeah.
There's different things. I mean, obviously, one of the things we didn't mention was also we've got thralls. And there's like mind control as a theme in the game as well.
50s sci-fi theme.
Oh yeah. You're standing there in this like beam of light going, oh!
In fact, that brings me on to another thing. There's the horrible brain in a jar as well. The brain in the jar is just a complete horrible thing to have out.
Yeah.
And in fact, we should probably talk about the mechanics of this game, actually.
Well, yeah, let's get into that.
So, like, as you're like, sort of, the aliens are turning up, the hexes have got the door things, the hatches.
Oh, yes,
hatches.
yes.
So some sides are open and some sides have hatches on these hexagons, and you have to open the hatches and stuff, and that costs action points to do, and that becomes a bit of a problem during the game as well, because the hatches always close at the end of the turn too. Yeah. So if you want to try and shoot an alien or something, you have to make sure that you've got line of sight to it. Yeah.
And one of the problems that you find is that the aliens can attack you.
Yeah.
Through whether or not a hatch is closed, they can generally always do something to you.
Some of them can. The sorcerermen, they're considered to have some sort of psychic ability, so that they can open a hatch and instantly close it again, which means that they can shoot you through walls, essentially, which is pretty horrible, but you just have to try and deal with it. But it's always just becomes part of the strategy of the game. But the thing about this game is that it essentially has a kind of time limit, doesn't it? So, like, because you're constantly scanning new tiles on every single player's turn. So there's constantly more and more aliens coming up. So you have to try and sort of get to your mission goal as quickly as possible without dying. If any one person dies, you lose. So, like, there is a bit of a time limit here, because if you take too long, if you piss about, if you just, like, wander around picking up all the equipment and stuff like that, just trying to, like, tool up, basically, you're actually just going to end up with a board full of aliens that are going to kill you. Yeah.
And once basically everything's revealed, like you say, they've got the red alert thing, it just keeps on.
There's making things once worse. Every tile's revealed, most scenarios have a red alert. Yeah. And that generally means that something really bad will happen. So in one of them, I think, when you were trying to...
Well, yeah, the second mission, we were trying to escape from the slave cells. And we were trying to find an elevator. And I believe, the red alert condition for that was that aliens just started coming from the elevator that you're trying to get to and escape from. Every turn.
It's a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
But some of the little things in the game, they're quite interesting, like the equipment and stuff and how the combat works. In fact, they have a sort of generic sort of success thing. So you have some 8-sided dice. Yeah. So anytime you try and, like, shoot something or do an IQ thing, like try and heal yourself, you have to roll 8-sided dice depending on what you're doing. So, like, if you're trying to heal yourself, you roll your IQ level. If it's 3, then you roll 3 8-sided dice. And successes are always 1s, 2s, and 3s. Are they 8-sided or are they 10-sided, actually? I think they're 10-sided, aren't they?
They are 10-sided, yeah, you're right, they are 10-sided.
So it's even harder than it sounds.
Yeah, it is pretty tough.
So you basically got, like, a roughly 33% chance, something like that, of rolling a success.
Yeah, we could get into the statistics of it, but basically, we're not going to touch that. Although saying that, there is who's the chap?
Jeff Engelstein. He's the sort of massive nerd of the board game designer world who loves to put a chart on everything that he's worked on. So he's put a chart of how many the probability of success and stuff like that, depending on the dice that you're rolling and things.
He was being slightly tongue in cheek in that he was applying it to himself, and the fact that he just constantly failed dice rolls.
Yeah. That seems to be one of the things that he does, though. Yeah. He'll work on something that he fails at until he can get it right.
It's an admirable trait,
it is, but he gets a bit boring.
With his charts.
But, so some of the other things, like combat. Yeah. I quite like the way that the combat is dealt with in this game, because you get various weapons. So, like, you might have something like an air knife, or you might have a plasma rifle or something like that, or...
Yeah, you got your plasma rifle's your probably most standard weapon.
Yeah, and you get, like, sonic shotguns and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Just very, just like, put a scientific word in front of a weapon, and then you've got your sci-fi weapon. And, like, they work on, like, different range things. So, like, your air knife can only be used if on an alien you're in the same tile as. But you've got things like your rifle, which can shoot things that are far away. But I think it's the rifle that has the if you try and shoot something in the same tile as you with a rifle, you only roll 2 dice. But if it's in 1 or 2 tiles away, you roll 5.
Yeah.
And if it's 3 tiles away, you roll 3.
It's more sort of long-range
so
weapon.
it's much more of a long-range weapon, whereas the sonic shotgun is 4 dice in the tile you're in or the tile next to you, but that's as far as it goes.
Yeah.
And I quite like that, because it's really dealt with that whole sort of range thing and line of sight thing in a really sensible manner compared to some other games that do these kind of things. When it's like, if you're at range X, then it's -1, and range 3 it's...
Yeah, that did seem quite intuitive. And we
really
didn't
was,
really have a lot of problems with the combat in terms of just what we needed to do. You can sort of tool up at the start of your missions as
That's
well.
right,
when we got to the later missions, it was basically you select your equipment, which was quite a cool thing we found. We were suddenly quite enthused by that idea.
But once you get to that third mission, then you can actually pick your own stuff. Yeah, we were like, brilliant,
let's
great. 2 up for this mission, and then we failed.
Aye, but it was fun. It was a fun failure. I had this, like the flamethrower, probably had some sci-fi thing thrown in.
Yeah, I probably.
The parabolic.
Plasma thrower.
The parabolic AK-47.
And I think, I did take the sonic shotgun, and but we had to get some alien samples, so we took an air knife as well.
Yeah.
Because if you use an air knife on an alien, you can take its blood. Blood sample off it.
And there's certain mission conditions where you need to...
We had to get blood samples.
Yeah. You had to get them from every single alien.
Which just seems really difficult. Like,
pretty tough.
Going up and stabbing a sentinel to death. Like, 4 hit point sentinel. Like 4 hit points in this game, that's quite a lot, considering most things only have 1.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of aliens to deal with, and like trying to concentrate on one thing to try and take it down while there's tons of saucermen around you is pretty difficult.
But it does make you, because there is, like, the only really sort of random element in it is the sort of, like, which aliens are coming out sort of thing. But once you've got aliens on the board, you can start to work out a kind of strategy as well. So it's just, you can really plan ahead, so you go, right, if I do this and this and this, then I can set this up for, like, I've got the hatch open, so you can then just easily walk through, or you can stand where you are and shoot and stuff like that, and you can properly work out some sort of good tactics, and that's one thing I quite liked about this game. Yeah.
Well, there's another thing we should probably mention as well about the dice rolling with the successes is something that kind of is, I find, quite specific to this game is the Overkill system.
Oh yeah.
That's quite a big.
That is a big part of this game.
I think that and the sort
of
and the scanning are sort of 2 of the quite major elements to the game. Basically, when you're rolling for combat or something, you roll your success, and basically, like, if you get your 1, 2, or 3, that's fine. You've succeeded.
Yeah.
Any further successes you roll go into your overkill thing, and there's various options you can do that. Each character will have an overkill option. Like, I was using mine quite a lot as the combat guy, basically allowing me to strafe, so I could just basically take out more.
Yeah, so you're basically standing like shooting your gun in an arc sort of thing.
So you could target various hexes from the one that you'd originally fired at. I don't know, yours allowed you to...
Mine gave other people action points.
Yeah, that was...
Because I'm the captain, so
useful.
I'm just basically like inspiring people as such sort of thing.
And
that was actually quite useful.
Slow down an air vent while hiding.
Yeah. Well, we had other things like the doctor, if he overkills, he can heal people.
Yeah, that was extremely useful.
It was very useful.
Then
you can also use, like, each alien, when you're targeting an alien, each alien has its own overkill thing, which you can use against it.
Yeah.
So the aliens also have their own personal overkill, which they use, but there's also a different one which you can use against it. So you got things like the saucermen, like if you overkilled on them, you could stun another saucerman anywhere else on the map, basically.
Well, it made it, I mean, I think it was very rarely that, if we rolled an overkill, we weren't able to use it in some kind of way.
Yeah, that's right.
Which made it quite useful to, it rewards success.
That's it, But also the weapons and stuff have overkill options.
Yeah.
Which is quite fun.
Aye, there was like moving fire with the sort of like the plasma pistol thing.
Yeah, that's right. Aye, so if you overkilled on that, you could basically move for free instantly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a sort of it's something I've not really seen in a game before. I don't think so. Having a success thing and then not just using all those other successes as extra hits or anything. It's actually giving you some sort of option to.
Yeah, I found it was quite a unique and quite interesting system that really it gives the game a new dimension.
Yeah. So that probably covers Space Cadets. I mean, I find it like it's a really tough game, but at the same time, I actually really enjoy it. It's
quite satisfying to play, and it plays quite quickly as well. So I mean, that's the thing. We failed that mission, and then we had another go at it. We cracked it. But it was quite, we were quite willing to do it. It was just, there wasn't a lot of faffing about with the setup and everything. It's quite simple to set up, and quite fun to play.
You're only saying it's quite simple to set up because I was the one setting it up.
Aye, well, yeah, but you look like you were having an easier time of it than you
I'm
normally
not, because the different scenarios. I was actually going to say that the setup in it's not that great, to be honest. Well,
really?
Not that it's not great. It has to be done. But
I mean, I know the kind of the tokens on the tiles can be.
There's so much like you've got to shuffle these tokens and then shuffle those tokens and then you've got to shuffle the map tiles and all that kind of thing. But you were just sitting watching and drinking beer, so
that's fine.
So you really enjoy that, I would imagine.
I observed a simplicity to the to what was going on. It was like watching one of these sort of Zen Buddhist garden things.
I didn't feel like a Zen Buddhist.
No, you didn't, yeah.
I felt like a very...
I did, watching you, yeah. The Zen Buddhist, like, watching the snail crawl across his garden, probably doesn't consider that the snail's raging. He's hating every minute of it.
Well, right, that's great. So you've already compared me to a snail, so...
Yeah.
Thanks, Euan.
We're off to a good start.
Euan. Right. Space Cadets away missions.
Excellent. I give it 5 mutants to Metaluna.
Okay, I'll go on with that.
Okay.
So, next up on the agenda, Imperial Settlers, Euan.
Yes.
It's a board game.
It's a board game.
Well, it's not really, it's a card game.
It is quite a card game.
It is.
It's a civilization building card game.
Yep, and plays quite quickly compared to most civilization style games.
Yeah.
Unlike Sid Meier's Civilization, the board game, which is one of my favourite games, but still, that's an afternoon.
Aye. At some point we do need to, I think we need to do a whole civilization. There's a whole evolution of civilization games and board gaming. But for now,
Civilization one that came out in the 70s or something.
Aye.
Which I do have a copy of.
I actually had that one brought up to me recently. I can't remember who was mentioned that they were playing it. I was like, you tried to play that game, did you? We tried that once.
That's a weird game.
Yeah. But for now, we're keeping it simple.
Yeah, let's stick to Imperial Settlers.
Yes. It's now, you say this is actually based on...
I think it's loosely based on the Settlers.
It's inspired by.
I think the artwork and stuff in it is very much like the Settlers video game.
Aye. Cute little people.
Cute little people, yeah. And in fact, I'm sure the tagline on the front of the box is a game about civilizations to care about.
Aye. They're very nice,
And the designer, Euan?
Oh, it's good old Ignacy
Trevicek, I believe is the pronunciation.
Yes, we've looked at his game before, one of his games before. Yes, Robinson Crusoe.
He's a really good designer. He's one of my favourites. These Eastern European designers, they're nailing it.
They really are. Yeah, they're coming over here,
nailing our board games.
Yeah, and giving us jobs,
making us have fun with their shit board games. Yeah, Imperial Settlers. So it's a civilization game in which you can play one of 4 civilizations each. And those are the Romans, the Japanese, the Egyptians, and just the barbarians.
Barbarians.
I'm going to say it's a card game, which each civilization has a deck of cards.
Yeah.
And there's also a common deck of cards in the middle of the table. And basically all you're doing is there's kind of like a drafting round, so you get some of the common cards out, and these are just like buildings, basically. So you'll have things like, you get things like ruins, even.
Yeah.
And then you get things like, forests, which is still counted as a building in this game, but, there you go. And you get like, carpenters, and you'll get quarries, and that kind of thing.
If it's on a card, it's a building.
Sort of your classic civilization style buildings,
yeah.
sort of thing.
Sort of various resource-based ones. I suppose you can divide them up into 3 different types. You've got your production buildings, your action buildings, and then features, which just
you could
give you a little bonus.
Split them up like that, and the game does.
Well, yes. I think that's where I got the idea.
It might well be.
I think I was trying to be a bit too clever for my own good. Hope Ignacy doesn't come and find me.
So as you're saying, 3 different types of buildings.
Yeah.
And essentially, you have this sort of like drafting round, so you get a number of cards out depending on the number of players, and then you each basically get 2 common buildings. But you're also drawn from your own deck.
Yeah.
So only the Romans can have Roman cards, and only the Japanese can have Japanese cards, and all that kind of thing. And each of the civilizations has a sort of different flavour to them, sort of thing. The game follows the same rules depending on the civilization you are, with some slight differences for the Japanese and the Egyptians.
Yeah.
But I think the Romans and the barbarians are just straight follow the rules sort of things. But the differences are minor, really. But they do add flavour to the civilizations.
Yeah, and they do affect your tactic in playing them.
Oh yeah, totally.
Obviously the barbarians, you've got a lot of. We'll get on to exactly how this works, but you've got a lot more sort of combat, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, more sort of raiding, I would call it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things you can do in this game is raise buildings.
Yeah.
Which is basically just destroying them. And the barbarians are definitely tailored towards doing that, especially other people.
Whereas kind of going for other people's buildings, generally.
Whereas the Romans are more set up to generate points depending on other buildings that they have.
Yeah.
The Egyptians, they're a bit of a strange one. I played them last time we played, because I played it twice now.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the Romans.
The Egyptians, they can do some really annoying things to other people. Like, they can use other people's buildings as their own, and stop them from using it. And there's another card that lets them just completely stop someone from using a card at all.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Japanese, which you played.
Yeah, and the Japanese have got a few little funny little sort of ways about how you use them. They're the only civilization, I think, that you can actually raise their own faction buildings.
Because generally, you can only raise common buildings, basically. The ones that aren't faction specific.
Yeah.
Are the ones that can be raised.
And you can do this to great effect. Especially towards the end of the game, I realised that because it costs you a resource, it costs you food to actually raise your buildings, and Japanese.
No. That costs a raise token, but it costs you food to make a deal.
Oh yeah, sorry.
But we'll get to that.
Sorry, yeah, I'm getting way ahead of myself.
You're way ahead of yourself.
Yep.
But right.
Again, that's something quite specific.
Let's go into the mechanics of it. So, when it's your turn, you've got different resources. So you've got these like raise tokens, which are little swords, and you've got defense tokens, and you've got food, you've got wood, you've got stone, and you've got gold.
Yeah.
And gold can be counted as any of the wood, food, or stone, basically. And it's something that the Egyptians are tailored towards, basically generating gold and using it, which I really enjoyed. But
you were the only one of us seemed to get gold in any sort of decent amount.
Well, that's the thing. So the different races have abilities to store things, because if you don't use your resources by the end of a round, you lose them. Yeah. Except that the races themselves are allowed to store a specific type of thing. So I think the barbarians can store people, which is another kind of resource in the game. And the Egyptians store gold, the Japanese can store food, and I think the Romans can store raise tokens.
Oh.
Which was quite weird for me, because I didn't really see the point in that, but maybe I just got the bad cards in my hand when I played it that time.
Yeah, I think it's a game where there's a few sort of little nuances that I don't think I quite grasped the first time through. Like you say, using up the resources, for each round, and there's 5 rounds in the game, you have to, you basically go around the table and everybody takes their action, whether they're building something or using an action on one of their cards. You can do this as many times as you want until you no longer can really do anything. And you basically want to do that, but also once you have to declare that you're going to pass once you're done with everything you want to do. Once you've passed, you can't then be targeted for attacking somebody trying to raise you or
nobody can do anything to you once you've passed.
Yeah, because you can no longer do anything at that point anyway. So.
But you're getting your cards out on the table. We should probably explain this by using up your resources.
Yeah.
So each sort of card will have a cost on the top of it, and it'll be like wood or stone or some other thing. But the faction buildings, the ones that are specific to your own faction, most of them, not all, but most of them, require you to destroy another building before you can build it. So if you're wanting to put out one of your faction buildings, and the faction buildings are generally stronger than the common buildings.
Yeah, more.
You pretty much want to destroy a common building to put it out. So you've got to really sort of plan ahead, sort of thing. But you get cards called the ruins, actually, which are free to build, and you can basically just put them in and then use them to build a faction building.
Yeah,
which is because you look at the ruins and you think that doesn't really do anything, but then you realise, I can just raise that and put something else in its place for pretty much nothing. Yeah. You can do other things with your cards as well. So you can raise cards from your hand. You can raise common cards, and each card's got another thing at the top that says, raise to get, and then it'll have some resources on it. So you can basically just raise cards from your hand using a raise token to get those resources. Or you can make deals with the cards, and at the bottom of every card there's a little icon.
So make a deal to produce whichever resource.
So say make a deal to produce wood, and then every turn you'll produce an extra wood. I think the Japanese were kind of tailored towards doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, because with being able to store food, and I kind of got into that sort of in the middle of the game. I realised, this is kind of a tactic you want to be using with them is to just get these deals out, and in your production phase you're getting quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There's also, I just remember also the one other thing about the Japanese is that you can designate your people tokens as samurais, and we discovered about halfway through the game that they're actually meant to stay for the entirety of the game. And they'll defend your buildings, so it just makes it harder for people to try and raise your buildings. That was something I found quite useful. I generally kept all my faction buildings safe.
Well, you did have a lot of samurai out
when I was being torn apart by John with his barbarians.
I was doing everything in my power to stop him.
He was running away. He did win in the end, didn't he?
He won by a single point after lagging behind for the vast majority of the game. He just took a ridiculous lead. He somehow managed to get so many faction buildings out by the end of the game, which score you 2 points each, compared to the common buildings which score you 1. That he basically just boosted straight ahead of us.
Yeah. So getting the faction buildings out is pretty important, really.
Yeah. And we should probably say that this is a victory point game. This is a game where you score points. Yeah. And you can score points in a number of different ways. So, you score points for your buildings at the end of the game, but also some of your buildings will give you points depending on what it does. So you'll get things like, like a building that says, for every brown building you have in your civilization, score that many points or something like that. Or you can also get, some of the Japanese cards had, they were basically just producing points every round.
I did have one that was, and you could use I think you could spend food, which Japanese could generate quite a lot of and store, to get victory points every round.
That's it. And I had a bit of a thing going on with gold and stuff like that in the Egyptian race. So it was basically if you trade in a wood and a gold, then you would get points for it and stuff like that. And I just kept using that to generate. In fact, I think that's where I got most of my points from in the end. Which is basically just doing stuff like that, which is trading my resources for victory points using some of these buildings. And it's quite good that way. The game is totally tailored to just setting up combos and just having a look at what's in your hand and what common cards are there, sort of thing, and then just saying, right, this is how I'm going to generate some points this round, sort of thing. It
really is all about getting a good sort of combo. I mean, you've got a lot of cards will get you resources as you go through that round. So if you play your cards right, you will be able to do quite a lot if you play your cards right.
Good game.
That was a Brucey bonus.
Brucey bonus there for you, ladies and gentlemen. Wait, what? What were we talking about?
We were talking about playing your cards right.
We were talking about Imperial Settlers, weren't we?
Yes.
I've completely lost it now.
No, that's fine. Well, I'll try and pick up the thread where we left off. Basically, I think we've covered all the main mechanics of the game. Really, the kind of you're just getting these cards down.
Yeah, so you're getting these cards in production buildings, which will produce things every round, and then you've got your features, which will do something usually quite strange. Something that's sort of abnormal to the game, usually.
Well, a few of them had, and there is, if I've got a few quibbles with this game, it's that certain things aren't always made clear.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of sort of, especially where you've got a player board or something like that in these games, where generally, even if it's not immediately clear when you first sort of learning the rules or whatever. Everything's kind of represented on there, whereas there were a lot of little rules that weren't in the game, as it were. Sort of like you had to kind of go get it all down and sort of check on the rules, and I think that hampered me.
That common. I've played games that are a lot worse than this.
Yeah, maybe, and I think it's one of those things as well. But the game plays so fast that you will pick that up, and you could, you successive games, you'll get the hang of the civilization.
I think most of the things that were tripping us up were the sort of civilization specific rules, especially with the Japanese. I don't think we really totally understood how the samurai worked and stuff like that. But
I think, I definitely hampered myself at the start, not quite getting how to do getting the resources out and sort of making the best use of your resources. But the main thing is just to really go for it, build as much as you can, get all your resources used up, play cards that are going to get you more resources, and just extend your game turn as much as you can.
Bigger.
Yeah,
and one of the strategies in it, because generally, unless it's the Japanese, then your faction buildings can't be raised, but your common buildings can by other people. And I think one of the sort of strategies is really just trying to get as much of your sort of faction cards out as you can, and reducing the number of common buildings that you have, so that people don't, because they can't raise your faction building. So if you've got a sort of useful faction building and a useful common building, you're better off like putting the common building in and then burning it to the ground to put the faction building in.
Well, one other thing as well is that if someone does attack you raise one of your buildings, it becomes a foundation which you can then use. So you then only have to pay.
That's true.
The resource cost.
I forgot about that
for your faction building, which was kind of working out towards the end. If I'd maybe been able to get more stuff out in the earlier part of the game, when John was attacking me, and I had a lot of foundations that I could have used to then start, just if I had the resources, just to whack down as many faction buildings as I could.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Sorry, I was staring at the waveforms.
Oh, you're enjoying those waveforms?
Yeah. Mesmerised by this recording program.
Excellent.
Right, so I think, in fact, one other thing we should say is that Imperial Settlers, they're gearing it up for expansions.
Yeah.
So, because it only came out this year, I think.
It's quite a new game.
And they're gearing up for expansions, but when you think about these sort of civilization games, like Sid Meier's Civilizations, when the expansions came out for that, they added in new civilizations, new rules, that kind of thing. I think the expansions for Imperial Settlers are just going to be more cards for the same factions, for the same races.
Right.
And the idea is it's then going to become a bit of a deck builder, because it's a 40-card deck, I think, that you get for each civilization, and they're going to give you more cards than that. And then you basically build your own deck out of those.
Right.
Which is kind of weird, because it's almost like taking this game into an almost Magic the Gathering, or
I'm having difficulty visualising how that, because the game works very well as it is.
I think it's totally understandable. I mean, I think because the way that the cards are, because they all link up together, it is kind of similar to like the way sort of Magic the Gathering and things like. You want a deck that works together. You don't want a mishmash of cards. So if you can tailor the deck towards a specific strategy, then that's going to work for you, sort of thing. Well, if you get it right. I'm always terrible at these things.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, because even in the decks, you've got multiples of quite a lot of the faction buildings. I mean, I had a lot of them that were sitting there, and at the end, I was just like trying to get raise tokens just to get to being the Japanese. I was able to
Japanese. I wanted to destroy everything.
Turning Japanese, I wanted to burn. I wanted to burn all my buildings down. Because I was able to do that, and a lot of the faction buildings for the Japanese, where they had points, victory point reward. It was something at the end of the game where I had, various ones in my hand. It's like, right, just get rid of these and get points. Just burn them down, get points. They're made of paper anyway, who cares?
So I think it'll be quite interesting. I think I'll pick up the expansion.
Yeah.
The first expansion whenever it comes out, because
definitely one I want to play.
I'd be interested in the deck building aspect of this game. I think they're right. I think I do care about the civilizations in this game enough to actually go for a deck building aspect of it. Yeah. To actually sit there and think about it, because I've never been that motivated in games like I've played Android Netrunner. I've got a few of the expansions for that and stuff. The little decks that you get and stuff like that, and I just find it really hard to motivate myself to actually build a deck for that.
It's difficult to relate to these cyberpunks. They're not.
Oh, Pawel will kill you for that one.
They're cold. It's a dark future. They're cold, unfeeling
cold,
people.
They're Polish.
Well, they're not all necessarily Polish. Although, as I say, we're going to start reading Neuromancer again, and you've got, isn't it? I believe the main character in that's called Takeshi Kovacs. So they're basically.
There you go.
Yeah. So positing that basically at some point, sort of various Eastern European nations and Japan are just going to all merge into that. That was what human life will be, and most people don't have a problem with that.
I'd like to say that the Euan's opinions aren't necessarily mine.
Or the opinions of this
the
podcast. Yeah. Let's not let the commissioner down on this one.
Right. So yeah, Imperial Settlers. I think it's a pretty good game.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of a rating for it. I think I would give it 4 Japanese sacrifices.
I'd give it 6 portly farmers.
There's a portly farmer in the front of that box, isn't there?
He's a cheeky chappy.
I don't know which race he's supposed to represent.
He doesn't, to me, really represent any of the races
so
in the game.
Happy.
In fact, neither does the town behind them.
The Japanese will burn that.
I can't see barbarians building that. That is a classic little sort of like Eastern European gingerbread town. Not one you would expect to be built by Romans, Egyptians, Japanese, or even barbarians. Maybe the barbarians when they settle down.
Oh yeah,
in the hills
before they become barbarians.
Yeah. When they start to get complacent
let's
and
kill everybody.
They want goat's cheese and tapas.
That'd be a terrible idea. Imagine a race of barbarians that only wanted tapas. I want really small meals
until they bring us tapas.
Right, let's move on.
Yes. So the final board game that we're going to talk about in this episode.
The final board game
is Compounded.
Compounded, better living through chemistry.
Better gaming through chemistry.
Is it better gaming?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of something else.
They're the same thing, really.
Yeah.
It's a chemistry themed board game.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
Yeah, it really takes the chemistry angle seriously, and you're just making
compounds.
Chemicals, various compounds. Yeah.
You
might not be entirely scientifically accurate how you go about doing this.
Well, no, but if you had a scientifically accurate chemistry board game, I think many children would have died by now.
Yeah, it wouldn't really be a board game. It would just be...
It's just a science
game. It'd be a health and safety nightmare.
Right, so Compounded, it's a funky little game, strange little game, which is basically... You're playing the roles of scientists in a lab, and you're trying to just make various compounds and scoring points for whatever compounds you're making.
Another victory point based board game.
Do love a victory point based board game. Actually, I don't really mind about the points. I just like playing the games.
Well, no, I mean that's true, and we'd have to say from the outset, this probably does have one of the best victory point trackers of any game. You
can probably guess that it is the periodic table of the elements.
Yes.
So when you score points, you don't score,
You're simply adding electrons.
That's it. You're adding electrons. So you can sit there
so
and
you can think about it in that way, really.
Aye.
Yeah, it's like I've got the most electrons. I win. So you've...
Sorry, I started thinking about chemistry there.
I saw you gazing off wistfully.
I've gone a bit far off. Thinking about electrons.
Well, it did prompt us to get the old...
Electrons really confused me.
It did.
Popping in and out of existence all the time.
We got quite heavily into this, and we were obviously playing it with someone who is
actually a chemist.
Who is a chemist. He does this stuff for a living. So he was able to criticise all of the elements of the board game that didn't quite fit into his experience. But yeah, and it did also prompt us to get out the compound building kit that you got with...
Oh yeah, with an OU course that I did many years ago. Yeah. I did get the little molecule building thing.
I was a bit disappointed because I was hoping for it would be one of the ones with the big balls.
Right. Euan, this is a hell of a tangent. Let's get back to Compounded.
Well, we're talking about chemistry. How does Compounded work then?
Compounded, basically, at the start of the game, you have a grid, which is just a bunch of cards. And it's a 4x4 grid of these little cards. You can change the bottom row of the grid for some bigger compounds, but we'll just describe the basic version of it. So you've got a 4x4 grid. Yeah. And each of these cards, a little square card, has a compound on it, and it's fairly simple compounds. One of them's water. You've also got other sort of like, what's that, hydrozoic acid and that kind of thing, like just like various little, quite a lot of organic compounds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But basically, the object of the game is to just make some compounds, and so the compounds have got little elements on them, so they're making them up. So if it's water, it's got an oxygen.
Yeah.
And 2 hydrogens that are connected to it, and these actually the little cars show you how the
they are. You know,
compounds
they're accurate to the certainly a 2-dimensional model of the compound.
Basic chemistry.
And you're always putting in the atoms that are actually in those compounds. And
that's all you're doing. So you've got this this bag of the elements, which are just these little lovely looking little crystals. Of various colours. So your hydrogens are white, your carbons are black. You've got, what are the 5 elements that are in it? It's
so you've got hydrogen, carbon.
You've got oxygen. You've got nitrogen, and sulphur.
No, it's calcium.
Is it calcium?
Nitrogen, calcium, sulphur. There's 6.
Is there 6?
There's 6. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
6. Oh, I'll take your word for it. So there we go.
Just remembered that.
6 different elements, and so you're only making compounds that are obviously made of those elements.
Yeah. You're not like mucking about with lithium and things like that.
No. So when it's the game plays in a number of phases.
Yeah.
So like the first phase is that you draw some new elements from the bag, and then you can trade with the other scientists. So you can say like, here, have some oxygen.
I've got an oxygen atom knocking about my lab.
Can you give me a calcium
atom?
It's exactly like working in a lab.
Yeah.
It's just trading atoms with other scientists.
People are constantly putting atoms into the diplomatic bag and sending them upstairs.
And then when you come to your work in the morning, your boss makes you draw some elements out of a bag, and then he forces you to work with them.
Yeah. That's what you'll be making today, John.
But so you can trade your atoms with your other people. And then you move on to, what's the next phase? It's a claiming phase.
Yeah.
So you can claim any of the compounds that are on the table. You can be quite tactical about this, so you can claim a compound and like actually go for a different compound in that round if you want.
Yes.
But we'll get to that in a second. So the next phase, I think, is actually the placement, isn't it? So you place your elements.
You're placing your elements on the compounds you want
compounds.
to. Yeah.
So if you've got a claim token on a compound, nobody else can claim it, but people can still put elements on it, but that's only going to help you, really. So
yeah, they can't get any points from
it. But there are situations where they might have to, because you have to place all the elements that you can. Yes. And that depends on the research level. So you've got 4 little test tube things. You've got a little card.
Yeah. They basically represent the phases of the game.
They represent the phases of the game. And, like one of them lets you draw more elements. One of them lets you put more claim tokens down. One of them lets you place more elements. And the other one lets you keep more elements. Because if you've got more elements than you can actually store, then you have to discard some of them. But when it comes to the placing of the elements, you have to place the number of elements it says in that research level. So if you've got your research level up to 4 for that, then you have to put 4 elements on the board. And sometimes there are only, when it comes to things like calcium, there's not many cards that have that on it.
No.
So if somebody has claimed a calcium card and you've got calcium and you have to place that calcium, you have to put it on their card.
Yeah.
So you can be quite tactical about all this.
Yeah.
But you can also do things like you get temporary claims. If you finish a compound on the board that hasn't been claimed yet, you temporarily claim it and you will score the points for it at the end of the round. So you can be quite tactical. You can claim a compound that you might decide that you're going to do later, and then put all your elements onto a different one when it's your turn. So that's like a sort of way of just sneaking points and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And each of these compounds will also raise, when you score for it, it'll raise one of your research level things, one of your little test tubes. So you, like I say, get more elements or whatever. And that's essentially it. It's
a very simple game.
You just play around the table and you just do that, and the game ends when somebody hits us at 50 points, I think, or somebody gets 3 of the research things to the top level.
If anyone wants to tell us which element that would be number 50.
Oh,
I wouldn't know. So if you want to write in, send.
I'm just going to pick a random element now.
Really?
Selenium. Go look for me.
Oh,
for some reason, that word is sticking.
Okay, but I'm not going to say it because I do want people to send their answers in on a stamped addressed envelope.
I want you to make a noise telling me how I got on.
Let me just get this out. This must be really interesting for people listening.
Okay, so that's a noise telling you whether I was right or not.
Yeah, that's...
I'm having trouble deciphering that one.
You're meant to.
Right, okay.
For various reasons.
So, what do you think of Compounded then? I mean, like, as a game?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I enjoyed playing it the other night. It was only the second time I played it, and I think when you originally got it, we did have a go at it.
And it was confusing.
Aye. And I'd also just that day had a motorcyclist smash into my van at work and seriously injure himself. So my mind wasn't quite on the game, I think, when we played it last. This time, I was enjoying it a lot more. I was really getting into it.
I was going to make some terrible jokes about that there, but I don't think I'll bother, actually.
Yeah. One of the things that I quite enjoyed is the fact that you have to make your own fire extinguisher in this.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. The lab fires, that's right.
Yes, that is another element.
Some of when you're drawing these cards from the deck, whenever you complete a compound, you've got to draw a new card.
Yeah.
And but there's lab fires mixed into the compound deck. Yeah. So if a lab fire comes out, some of the compounds that are flammable might actually go up in flames. And if that happens, if it actually destroys one of the compounds, the elements on it scatter and they can go to the compounds around it, just like real life.
Ah, of course. That's chemical reaction, if
that's it.
If the elements are flying about,
that's something will grab them. Yeah. Some water will grab it.
Exactly.
And aye, that's an interesting thing. But you can also you get little tools and equipment in this game as well. So you can get a Bunsen burner and deliberately set something on fire.
Aye, which you did to me.
I did that to you. I just destroyed
the compound. I basically completed a compound because I had to, and then you just set it on fire. Much like a real chemist would to his colleague.
The right mischief makers, these chemists. Can't trust them.
The right bunch of cads. That's. I mean, you've got. I think there's like 6 or so sort of little bonus things. There's certain ones that you sort of keep and give you a constant bonus throughout the game. There's certain like one-use ones.
Yeah, like is it the journal or something? Every time you complete a compound, you can keep one of the elements rather than putting them all back into the bag and that kind of thing. So there are different little bonus things that you get.
Yeah, that basically covers it. As I say, I really enjoyed it.
I want to know what you think of it as a game.
So. As a game, I say, I think it's a good game. It's quite it's one of the ones that's sort of the more simple ones that I prefer sort of playing now and again, where you just
does play reasonably quickly.
It's one of those ones that I like. For some reason, it seems. I think it's just the theme. It just seems harder from the like. It's going to be a difficult game.
It seems,
but it's a bit of a breeze to play, really, and it's quite enjoyable. You don't necessarily need to be winning at it to really just be getting.
Or a chemist.
Yeah. Yes, I would give it 2 oxygen atoms, because that's what you generally get.
Compounded has a bit of a place in my heart, Euan, because I think it was only the second thing I backed on Kickstarter. Once I got into that bad habit of backing Kickstarter board games.
You've got a lot of Kickstarter board games.
It does have a wee place in my heart, and I do have the expansion for it now.
Yes.
And we need to break that out at some point, because that adds in some like variable player powers and radioactivity. Yeah. So,
and there's also like a saboteur as well, you were saying. So yeah, we'll come back to that one, and we will talk a bit more about Compounded through its little expansion, lovely little expansion, the Geiger expansion, the HR Geiger expansion.
Right, so that's us. Yeah, that's all the board games, isn't it?
That's us for board games.
That's
I think
it. That's wraps that up.
About as far as I want to go into board games this evening.
Excellent. So we will be back in a minute. We'll talk about a video game.
One video game in particular.
Because that's all we've had the time to play.
Yeah. But we've played it extensively.
We have played it extensively, and this is your fault, I have to say.
That's fine. I take full responsibility.
Okay, so when we come back, we'll tell you what that video game is.
Yeah, you're going to love it.
Okay, so let's talk about our video game.
Our one video game that has taken up the majority of our time.
Yep. Because we've been far too tired to actually think about anything else to play.
Yeah.
So you I was actually going to start playing some other video games, but then you made the frankly both terrible and brilliant decision to start playing Shenmue.
I think you encouraged me in doing this. I think
No.
Why don't we get Shenmue
I
out?
vividly remember this. You said, I think I might play Shenmue. And I said, yeah, alright then. Because I love those games.
Yeah, you do. You've mentioned it before on this podcast.
Several times.
Yeah. You've teased Shenmue.
So you have never played a Shenmue game before?
Never.
You have kind of seen me playing Shenmue 2
I saw a little bit of it, and you've shown me some videos of amusing bits from Shenmue 2 that you were sort of trying to tell me about. Shenmue. So
what are you thinking about Shenmue?
I'm loving it so far. I think it's a game that it's so sad that it really never got to kind of to a wider audience, or kind of you know, and essentially probably sunk the Dreamcast, along with just low sales of the Dreamcast anyway.
Shenmue didn't sink the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast
sunk itself.
Yeah. I think the problem is that Shenmue came out in the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
And it was then the second one came out and then it undersold. Yeah. And they cancelled it.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be a 3-parter. And people were raging.
We're not happy about it.
And as I've said before, it was pretty much the sole reason why I got a Dreamcast, was so that I could play Shenmue.
Yeah.
And at the time when I got the Dreamcast, they were still kind of talking about maybe making a Shenmue 3 on some sort of platform, but they never got round to it. And the whole thing was pretty much just fizzled out.
Yeah.
But it is now getting made, Shenmue 3. A good sort of 15 years later.
Better late than never.
It is now being made, and I'm so happy.
Yeah. A lot of people are.
I'm so happy.
I'm so very, very, very pleased to hear about Shenmue 3.
Or as someone in Shenmue would say, I'm too tired to talk to you right now. Go and talk to someone else.
Come back later.
A typical Japanese response to something.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, if we're just setting the scene, Shenmue, the very first, is essentially a Japan simulator, as far as I can see.
That's been your favourite way of describing it.
Yeah, it really is. You just generally doss about some little Japanese town, doing Japanese things, buying capsule toys.
Yep.
Winning tombola tickets for buying packets of crisps.
I love tombola in the tomato shop.
You start off with a bit of money and you end up just tanning it all on frivolous things while you're
darts and arcade machines
while you're waiting for points in the game to happen. Essentially, like
yeah.
It
was way ahead of its time, Shenmue.
Yeah, there's so much to it. It's such a immersive game.
Yeah.
You know, I can't think of a game certainly from that era where just everything's up for play, basically. You know, there's all the NPCs in the game are
talk to them.
They're real characters. They wander about.
Nobody's part of the background in this game, really.
Yeah. Even if they maybe don't have much chat, they're at least they're there, and they might have something. If you go at certain times of the day, they move about. They go to different areas.
And when you're looking for something, like if you're looking for, when at one point in the game we're looking for sailors.
Oh,
and you can just walk up to people in the street and ask them if you think where sailors are. And some people will just say, I have no idea. But other people would say, oh, maybe you should try the bars. And that's one of the cool things about it, is just that the NPCs, it's just, they will help you out sometimes, even if they're nobodies in the game, really.
And you play this kind of, you're this young Japanese high school student whose father's murdered by some shady Chinese people who possibly involved with the cartel. At this point, we're still trying to find it. Still trying to figure it out, really. We're on to disc 2 now.
Yep.
And we're yet to get a job, but that seems like it might be happening soon. We went from sailors and now we're...
Let's step back a minute, right? So we're talking about the story here. So so your father has been murdered, and your father is a martial artist.
Yes.
He's a jiu-jitsu practitioner, to be specific.
And you've been learning from him.
Yep. And Ryo, who's the main character in it, Ryo Hazuki, the character you control, he's, also a jiu-jitsu practitioner, and the very beginning of the game, he walks into the dojo and finds his dad fighting with some guy, and they're talking about some mirror, where's the mirror and all this thing, and then he ends up, this guy just kills your dad right in front of you.
Yeah.
And you're now trying to figure out exactly why. But the further as you're going through the game, so we're getting through, it's starting to seem like your dad might have been involved in some shady practice at some point.
Yeah, we're starting to get a clearer
somebody.
picture. Yeah.
So,
because you start off and you're almost sort of clutching at straws, really.
Yeah.
Just anything you can kind of find. So you know that they came in a black car. He was with a couple of guys in suits, and so you're asking people, did you see a black car? Anything you can tell me about it? Even just the slightest thing.
Yeah.
Any little clue to then sort of move on to try and find something a bit more substantial about him.
And that's the thing about it, because the game, that's the only clue that you start with, really.
Yeah.
So you then have to go into the town and just start asking people. And this is where, you can talk to everybody. Yeah. So you can just start asking people, and eventually you do get somebody will say, oh, maybe you should ask, this person.
Yeah.
Because, whatever it was, their cat was run over by a black car that day or something like that. And then you go, okay, so you go and find this person, and then you speak to them, and they'll be like, oh, maybe you should go up to this person because they nearly hit him and he was on a bike or something like that. And then it just sort of builds on and builds on and builds on.
Yeah, you do become quite familiar with all the characters that are just littered about the town. We find ourselves always referring to them by name.
Exactly, yeah, because and they're all quite distinctive people. There's no two characters in this game that are identical. Even the NPCs, the sort of thing. Everybody has their own personality and has their own sort of look and stuff like that. So you can actually start recognising people just by, there's that girl with the glasses that lives up there.
Yeah.
And she might not even be near her house. She can be wandering about somewhere down the park or something like that. And, it's just like, this is why I think Shenmue is just so well ahead of its time. And in fact, there are games that are being made today just still aren't doing things like that.
Yeah, it's the effort that's gone into it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, what you say is it cost some ridiculous amount to make. It was
the most expensive game ever made at the time.
Yeah.
And then Shenmue 2 became the most expensive game ever made.
It was the only one to sort of overtake it.
And I think that was part of the reason why the whole thing was just cancelled and fizzled out, because it was just like, these games were really expensive to make, and then Shenmue 2 undersold, and, they were just saying, well, we're not making a profit out of this, why should we make it? Sort of thing. I think there's enough hype being built up over the last 15 years. So many people desperate to see this third installment, find out what happens.
Yeah.
And, I know what happens in Shenmue 2, so I'm not going to ruin it for you, but it's sort of like, you're getting there, you're getting to the point where you think this is where it's going to end, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there's just so much hype being built up and people desperate to find out what happens that I think Shenmue 3 is going to be a big thing when it finally hits.
Yeah.
And I backed the Kickstarter, and millions and millions of dollars it made. It's ridiculous how much money they've made in the Kickstarter, and they're still accepting donations to make the game if you want to get your copy of it. And it's coming out on the PC and PS4.
Might just chuck them a few quid just to make sure that they get, they have enough items in the tomato convenience
that's
store.
it. The more money they make, the more tomatoes there will be.
The more tapes you can buy.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things in Shenmue, isn't it? That's
yeah, but you got your little cassette recorder.
I think in Shenmue 2 they got rid of that.
Did they? Oh,
yeah,
I like that element of it. And we found ourselves, waiting for a bus.
Yeah.
It's like, well, just stick the music on. I was like, let's go through this all these tapes that we've bought.
Get your little cassette player out.
Yeah.
You have to change the batteries in it.
You do that, yeah.
You have to go and buy batteries and stuff if you want to listen to your thing. Standing at the bus stop listening to Hip De Hop. One of the many, many songs that you can buy.
Yeah. Feel Tired song. Dandy Old Man.
Oh, we haven't bought Dandy Old Man.
No, we're going to get
hold
of
the jukebox.
I think that's the real prize, is to get hold of Dandy Old Man, because we listened to it in the jukebox and we're like, this is a smash hit right here. This is the one we want. Yeah. And it seems real. Being something of a music aficionado, would be wanting to get hold of Dandy Old Man.
We should do a cover of it for the podcast.
I think we will, yeah. We'll drop it in the theme music, We can maybe replace Dr. Dre's awesome theme for a bit.
Oh, I don't know. Dr. Dre's awesome game is... I don't know if we should mess with that.
Well, it's... The thing is, it's public domain now, so it's... anything can happen.
Back to Shenmue, other things that you like about it, Euan? I mean, because I'm obviously played it a lot, but, well, not the first one, but...
I think, it keeps on kind of sort of surprising me, the little sort of clues you find. And then there's almost like new gameplay elements that come in. I mean, we had a sort of like a stealth bit that we got onto yesterday. We were playing a bit of it.
Down in the docks, we had to hide from some security guards at night because we snuck in.
And it kind of, you play through all of the sort of the bits that the things that he's trying to do, essentially. So it does, it changes the gameplay based on, or it adds little bits of gameplay to kind of get through these bits. It's probably one of the earliest games to really probably use QuickTime events in the sort of amount that it does.
Been the first,
maybe the very first QuickTime event
to use that in that sort of game, anyway.
Yeah,
to use it as it is, if you see what I mean. So
yeah,
to have a sort of like you've got a cutscene and then all of a sudden you have to press A.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of times that we had a cutscene and I put the controller down and then ended up getting decked by somebody. Somebody punched me in the face. Well, another thing, the fighting in it as well. You got your first taste of the fighting the other night.
Yeah, we did a couple of fighting bits, and I've actually really enjoyed them as well.
Yep.
I was worried that it was going to be not a lot of fun from like the way that I'd seen it, because you get a couple of chances to sort of practice before then.
Yeah.
In parts and things. It's like, I should practice now. And and it looks great, the combat. It's all real sort of jiu-jitsu moves.
Yep. I totally, being a jiu-jitsu practitioner
you were geeking
myself,
out over some of those.
I was totally geeking out. Oh, nice up on Serenagi there.
Yeah, it was great to, just to see that actually come together really well. I mean, the first time you sort of get in a proper combat thing, it's like, well, it's after you've sort of looked for these sailors and you've really pissed them off, and if you get lured to some park where they're like, oh, we're going to jump this guy, and you're set about by about 6 or 7 sailors, which I dispatched pretty well.
Yeah, pretty well.
At first, I was getting punched from all angles.
It was the first fight in the game, though, so it will get increasingly
they want to
more
ease you into
difficult
it.
if it's anything like Shenmue 2, it will. But
that's the thing. I mean, there's all sorts of moves, and it's something that we've not even really explored to the full extent of what you can do with all the different moves. And there's more moves you can learn.
Yep.
And we're starting to get into the sort of some of the more sort of some of the characters that are obviously a bit more involved in this kind of mystery that you're trying to unravel, and they seem quite intriguing. Mm-hmm. You're basically looking for some Chinese folk at this point. You're just like anything.
You spend a lot of time looking for Chinese people.
Do you know any Chinese people?
Although the part when you were looking for sailors was bloody hilarious.
Aye.
You're just walking up to people and saying, do you know where any sailors are? And some people are like, why are you asking me that?
they weren't too pleased about being asked for where sailors are. They generally seem to assume you were up to something dodgy.
Or looking for a good time.
Yeah. I don't really have too much more to kind of add at this, but there's so much to it.
You have been really engrossed in it.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah. We spent a long time playing it yesterday, we really made some headway with it. And I just can't think of another game like it. It's so, you can't, apart from obviously the Japan simulator thing, which I'm being slightly facetious with, it's difficult to really, put it into a category. It's its own thing, and I don't think there's really been a game quite like it.
No, but it's definitely, you can see that considering when it came out, which was the sort of, was it the very late 90s or whatever?
I think so.
You can see how it's influenced other games. There's definitely a lot of these open world games sort of thing. That was possibly one of the first.
Yeah.
If not the first, properly open world game where you can just walk about and do what you like, and you don't have to just follow the main storyline. But you will eventually if you want to move the game on, obviously.
Yeah, you can just go and spend all your money in the arcade if you want.
Exactly.
Playing Space Harrier.
You can definitely see that things like, even things like Grand Theft Auto, that kind of because Grand Theft Auto was kind of lauded as one of the first properly open world games sort of thing. But Shenmue came out years before that.
Yeah. And I think that's like when I first saw Grand Theft Auto 3, and I was just like, I was blown away by that. And at the time, I was like, I hadn't really been keeping up with, I played a bit on the PlayStation and stuff, sort of where sort of 3D games had progressed to.
Yeah.
And, I just didn't realise, they've genuinely made this open world thing, but I had, at the time, had no idea that something like Shenmue existed.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things about Shenmue, is that a lot of people don't even realise it's a thing.
Yeah.
And that may well be because if you say Shenmue to somebody, people are like, that sounds like weird. What's
weird,
that?
Yeah.
But you say Grand Theft Auto to somebody and they're like, oh, violence.
Yeah, they get what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is, it's there obviously are the fighting parts to it, but it's kind of just a weird sort of melodrama for quite a lot of it. You're just sort of dealing with local people and there's lots of optional little things that kind of just, they might not affect the main storyline, but they just kind of, they're almost just flavour. They just give it this real life feeling to it.
Yeah.
And there's things like, you've got to, there's a sort of time element, so your day progresses, not in obviously real time or you'd be playing it forever. But you need to go home at the end of the day. You actually have a curfew in this. Your Ine-san wants you in by 11.
Yeah, Ine-san, she gets really worked up about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, it's Japanese people will quite casually tell young adults to have, to be back by a certain time. I was told to be back by 10. When I was staying with the host family in Japan, and I was like, I'll respect that. And they don't mind if you're going out for a tab.
Were they giving you 500 yen every day like any Sam?
No, they were not. No, they weren't. And I wouldn't have expected that from.
I do like that thing about Rio when he picks up his 500 yen from Ine-san in the morning, and then he says, "I better not waste this." And then the first thing that we do is go to the arcades.
Immediately go and waste it. Yeah. Well, I mean, there was several days where you're trying to. The sailors bit did take us a while to kind of make any headway with, and we were sort of looking around at night, and so you were spending most of the day just waiting until like the bars opened and things like that. You could go and that's another thing. Obviously, all the shops and everything are kind of open at certain times and things like that, and it's it really feels like a real little town,
a real world, a real world that you're actually existing.
Yeah, most of the buildings you can go into, you can kind of have, there'll be someone you can talk to in there.
If there's something there, you can generally interact with it in some way. So it's definitely like, it was a groundbreaking game. Yeah. Which was forgotten about, but for the most part anyway.
It does very much seem like, kind of with sort of the advent of like 3D games basically, that, and I remember even thinking this, when kind of computer games did graduate to everything, there was a lot more sort of 3D stuff that's like, what are the possibilities, or would you get these whole kind of almost lifelike games? Aye. And this, it's impressive that somebody's really wanted to kind of make that experience for people. Yeah. It just, I'm looking forward to Shenmue. I'm looking forward to getting through this, getting on to Shenmue 2. Maybe by the time they've completed Shenmue 2, Shenmue 3 will be released.
Probably not.
No, are we looking? What sort of timescale do you reckon we're looking at?
I don't know. I mean, we fairly beasted through disc 1, to be fair.
Yeah.
And there's only 3 discs in that first game. I think the second one might have 4.
All right.
But I mean, I don't think they're not like Witcher length games or anything like that. It's not Dragon Age or anything. No. It's not going to take you 100 hours to complete everything in it, sort of thing. But
I guess they can.
It's long enough.
Yeah, you can really just take your time with them.
Yeah, that's
and the days progress, so I mean, presumably it will just go on to into 1986. It starts in 1986.
That's right.
Yeah, so it may well move on to 1987. And as you're saying, you can transfer your data
onto Shenmue
2. So presumably the date will carry on.
I think it might, yeah. I'm not sure, but I think it might. I think it might just pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and I wonder whether, there's possibly things that worked into that about how the, maybe if you've taken too long, that might affect things. You might, maybe you might miss certain opportunities.
You'll find out.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic to.
I'll tell you what, I'm glad that you're as enthused about the Shenmue series as I am now.
Yeah.
It's good to see. It's good to see somebody discovering it for the first time and actually being like, blinking flip. This is brilliant.
That's the thing, and I hope that it kind of does have a resurgence. That maybe with the hype over Shenmue 3. I mean, there's obviously with the popularity of the Kickstarter, there's obviously an audience out there for it, and they will, with any luck, push it upon their friends and keep on going about until they go, I want to play this game, and they do play it and love it.
So I'm wondering what because I think Shenmue 2 was brought out on Xbox Live or something like that.
Really?
But I think only, I don't know why they did that. I'm pretty sure that
well, you
happened.
Think that, and certainly in the lead up to the third game, you might start seeing ports of.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering if they will release Shenmue and Shenmue 2 again on possibly PlayStation, because that's what's coming out. Shenmue 3's coming out on PlayStation, so
All right.
I'm wondering if maybe there'll be some.
Is it going to be out on any other
It's
platforms?
PS4 and PC only at the moment.
All right. Okay.
I've gone in for the PS4 copy because again, it's a console game for me. That's what I want to play on.
Yeah. It needs, I think it does need to be a console experience.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to watching you look for more sailors in the first one.
I'll be searching for those sailors. We're down the docks now, so
that's it.
It's really time to start knuckling down and finding those sailors. Yeah. A note as well on the hardiness of the Dreamcast console. Last night we were playing it, and Chris decides to move the table. I think part of your brain probably was aware that the Dreamcast was sat on the table.
What it really was.
As you just whisked the table away.
I was just sitting there thinking, why is that table there? And then I picked it up and moved it, forgetting the Dreamcast was sitting on it.
Which flew into the air and bounced off the carpet.
Yep.
Luckily landed on
the
right way up.
Right way up. And the game never skipped.
It didn't bother at all. It didn't care. Just the disc kept on spinning and the game kept on playing.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Dreamcast. It might have been a failed console, but it's indestructible.
It's a decent piece of kit. I've not played a lot of Dreamcast games, and I think
we played Choo Choo Rocket.
Did we play Choo Choo Rocket?
Oh yeah, you've definitely played Choo Choo Rocket. The most ridiculous cat and mouse game.
Oh yeah. Actually, I do remember that. There was one. There was like a kind of like sort of top down, it's sort of isometric. It was like I can't remember what it's called.
I don't know what.
Anyway, with some kind of police something. This is just a memory that I'm bringing up that is really of no consequence to anyone. But yeah, it was particularly.
Yeah, so whatever game that was you're talking about is a good game.
That was good. It was a good game. Yeah. Good game.
Oh, not
another Brucey bonus there.
Right. Well, let's wrap this up, Euan.
I think we should. We've talked quite extensively about board games, and we've had a good chat about Shenmue. I think
a good 20 minutes about Shenmue there. I think so.
It deserves it. It deserves it, and I think we may well come back to Shenmue. I imagine there will be more to say.
What we should do is play some different games.
Yeah, we should probably play some like recent games that people can actually get hold of on consoles. but I quite like the fact that we will delve into anything.
Yeah.
On this show.
Oh yeah, totally. From the outset of this podcast, I'd always said, in fact, I'd written it in the description of our podcast actually, was that we will talk about board games and video games, both old and new.
Yeah.
That is our thing. That's just whatever we're playing at the moment.
Yeah.
We're not going to discriminate. We're not going to say we have to play the newest, shiniest thing.
No, not at all. And I think it's good to.
For that.
Yeah. There's people who there's people on YouTube. Go on YouTube if you want like the review of the day from.
Don't get angry, man.
Go and watch one of these irritating Let's Play videos. Go and watch PewDiePie like gurn his way through Mass Effect or something like that. Just sod off, will you?
Okay.
We're here to talk about gaming in a more esoteric, just an overall view of gaming.
Water cooler chat, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's where we're coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do some sort of outro now, Euan.
I thought that was the outro.
Oh, was it?
That's fine. No, let's.
We're gonna. No, there's something we have to talk about in the outro. Our good friend / biggest enemy, Pawel.
Yeah.
Who has...
I would let people know that he would probably not mind being described as the biggest enemy. I think the idea of being a sort of nemesis...
Fact, he is pretty much my nemesis when it comes to gaming.
He's definitely provided
I love the guy, but he's going down.
Some nemesis moments. Yeah. We have. I think we did mention this in the last episode, possibly that
we're looking for contributors, basically, and Pawel has kindly taken up the mantle, and we have. Oh God, he has sent us something which is absolutely golden.
It is brilliant. It's 5 minutes of just pure Pawel goodness.
5 minutes of him not talking about what he was supposed to talk about, which is it's undescribable.
And calling Chris by the wrong name throughout.
Oh yeah. But I mean, what we'll do is we're going to edit this whole thing, but we'll put it into the next podcast.
Yeah, I think we'll save it for next episode.
We're just going to put it in as it was when he gave it to us.
Yeah,
Because-
with maybe a little bit of context, but just we'll let you enjoy it as it is.
But that's going to excite you for the next podcast.
Okay, that's coming up in episode 5.
On that note, anybody else that wants to contribute to the podcast, if you want to do a little segment, maybe 5 minutes chatting about something, then please feel free to send it to us, or have a chat with us first. Let us know what you want to do.
Yeah, if you've got any ideas, anything, we're happy to get it out there. We're based in Edinburgh.
That's it. If that's relevant.
So if it's if you can walk down the road to Edinburgh, then come and give us a shout.
Yeah. So you can send if you want to have a chat about that, then that's you can email us firstplayertoken@gmail.com, or you can find us on our Facebook page, the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast.
Yes.
Also, any questions, comments, criticisms, anything like that.
Queries.
Also, yep. Same again. Send us an email or chat to us on Facebook.
Yeah.
We will get back to you.
Yeah. Or even leave a comment on the SoundCloud.
SoundCloud as well. Yeah, SoundCloud's always there.
One of those little squares at the bottom. If you want to be one of those squares, we may even look at what you have to say.
We still don't have any internet, though.
Aye. We'll get that sorted out soon.
That's coming in a couple of days, I think.
Yeah.
In fact, by the time this podcast is out, we should have internet by that point. So.
And so we'll be able to get on there and look at what you've said about us.
Look at the backlog of messages. I'm sure there are thousands.
I'm sure there are.
Because they're a massive fan base. Right.
Anything else to add?
I think that's it.
All right. There was one thing I actually just want to mention. Going back to Compounded, you said you were going to make a joke, but decided not to. And just as I was eating a baked potato in the break there, it occurred to me: were you going to say that motorcyclist had a compound fracture?
No, it wasn't.
All right, fair enough.
No, it wasn't.
Because I can tell you had several.
That was not one of the jokes that I had in my head.
Oh, right, fair enough.
And to be honest, I think that was a traumatic experience for you.
Yeah. Well,
I was actually going to ask if they'd given them any oxygen at the scene, but I just decided.
I don't know. At that point, I was out of it. Yeah. Okay. Before we get any trouble, before we get any more trouble from the commissioner. Oh God, here he comes. Right, we better go. He's sending his secretary down. Right, we best move on before they.
You've taken that too far.
All right. Well, okay. Well, the commissioner's going to take it too far in a minute.
Right. That was episode 4.
Episode 4
of the Large and Unnecessary First Player Token Podcast.
Thanks for listening, if you did.
And thanks for listening if you didn't, so work out that paradox.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of unrequited thanks lying about there on
See
the
you later,
internet.
people.
Bye.